Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm taking you behind the scenes of how I made this Shania Twain sculpture. There were challenges, redos, mild identity crises, but in the end, completely worth it. I'm so proud of how she turned out, and I can't wait to show you the whole process. When I first start a new sculpture, I usually pick my victim from one of my pre-made base models. It just makes the whole process so much faster. If you're curious on how I make them, I've linked the full tutorial in the description where I show you how I create these castings from scratch. They're also super versatile. As you'll see, none of my final sculptures ever look the same. You can customize, reshape, and paint them however you like. So to start, I like to make my base out of aluminium foil. This saves you from having to use loads of clay, as clay can be quite expensive. The clay I'm going to be using is Apoxie Sculpt. I really like this stuff. It's great to work with and it also air dries, which is awesome. It's extremely important that when you're handling this stuff to wear gloves and protective gear. I'm about to do a magic trick. Ready? Boom! Hey! I've gotten some really nasty rashes and dermatitis from not being covered up enough, so make sure you're wearing the correct gear, please. Okay, so to protect my surface, I'm going to use a page of this disposable paper palette, because once this clay sticks, honey, it ain't coming off. So to get started with the clay, you need 2 equal parts A and B. The instructions say to mix them for 5 minutes, but I think that's a bit overkill. You also don't have to measure it out, I just find it easier to eyeball it and mix it together well so that it's all one color. We're going to be working in layers, and the first layer is just to get the form, and then the second layer will add more detail. Just a reminder, it's going to look really messy and ugly in the beginning, but you've got to trust the process. There's a lot of that going on. Also, you have to remember to work really quickly with this stuff as it hardens after 30 minutes. If you're a beginner, I recommend starting with a small piece so you don't waste any product. It's easy for time to get away from you, so just beware. So I start by patting down the clay. It's a bit sticky to handle straight after you mix it, but once you handle it a bit more, it becomes easier to work with. So that's coming along nicely. Now to smooth it out, you're going to need a paintbrush and some water. Just dip your brush in and slowly smooth out the surface. You don't need too much water as it will mess up your clay, but just enough to make it a bit softer. You can also use your fingers to smooth out the clay. And so once you're happy with the first layer, we're going to leave it for 24 hours to set. See you soon. Alrighty, it's quite hard now, which is awesome, and now we're going to apply the second layer. Let's get into it. Once you're done, you can leave it to harden again for another 24 hours. Now we're going to work on Shania's outfit. I've decided that instead of doing Shania's full body suit, we're going to give her a crop top instead, just to break up the leopard pattern a little bit. Fun fact, I was about 6 years old when this song came out in 1997, which is crazy. I had no business watching this video clip, but oh my god, how could you not fall in love? I thought she was the coolest woman I've ever seen and I want to be just like her. Obviously I can't pull off a leopard get up, but like, whatever, she can. So once the crop top is done, I'm going to sculpt her jacket on top. I like to use this wooden tool dipped in water to help create the perfect shape. Again, you can also take your brush and smooth out any lumps and bumps. We're going to leave this to dry for another 24 hours and then it should be ready to sand. Now that our sculpture is dry, we're going to sand off all this buildup and level out the base a little bit. In this process, we're going to smooth it all out to get ready for painting. I like to wet my sanding blocks before sanding, as this prevents dust from going everywhere. You don't want to inhale this stuff either, so it's important that you wear a proper mask when sanding. So simply dip your block into some water and you can start sanding away. I can't believe how dirty this sculpture got, but it's easy to clean. I use 3 different grades of blocks and just rotate them around just depending on how I'm feeling. I got these blocks from Bunnings, which is a hardware store in Australia. As you can see, they're really well loved and should probably replace them very soon. You have to use a lot of elbow grease to get this epoxy off. It's funny you wouldn't think about how much actual prep goes into making these sculptures before they're ready to paint. Sculpting, drying, and sanding are probably the most time-consuming aspects. But these are important steps as this needs to be done properly before you can even think about painting. Because the base isn't completely straight, I'm going to use my Dremel to fix it up. I did this off camera outside to make sure I didn't get any dust in my house. It's looking so much better now. Now that it's all smooth and ready, give it a good wipe down and get any excess dust off. And now we're ready to move on to the next step. Alrighty, it's priming time. To prime this piece, we're going to use some gesso. The purpose of priming is to make it easier for the paint to stick to the actual sculpture. Just plop it on using your paintbrush and make sure you cover everything. You could mix the gesso with water for a smoother finish, but I prefer it thick. Once applied, just leave it overnight to dry and it will be ready for painting the next day. Okay, the gesso is dried and feeling fabulous. We're going to move on to my favorite part, which is painting, or airbrushing, I should say. I have the eye water Eclipse, which I really enjoy. It's a bit on the expensive side, but I personally feel like it was worth the investment. Make sure to wear a mask whilst you're airbrushing, as you don't want to inhale any paint particles. Oh my god, why are there bubbles coming out? This isn't supposed to happen. Something must be loose, just bear with me. Guys, I had to order new airbrushing parts, which took a few days. There was air creeping into my tool, which was causing the bubbles. Luckily, the issue is fixed and we can continue. I tell you what, I feel like a proper mechanic fixing this brush and getting it working again. Alrighty, we're back in business. I did a few makeup bits and bobs off camera as I was getting a bit frustrated, but I'm good now. The airbrush works perfectly, in case you were wondering. I wanted to give Shania some rich eye makeup like in the video clip. The way I painted this reminds me of a tropical ice lolly, which looks kind of delicious. I'm really happy with how this makeup turned out. Once the makeup is done, I'm going to fill the eyes with white. I like to take my time with this so I don't get any white bits on the eyelids. I'm then going to mark out in pencil where I want the iris to go and then fill it in with some brown. I have to add a few layers as the paint is quite thin. Once complete, I added more details and highlights to make it look more realistic. If you're happy and you know it with the face, we're going to give Shania a face mask to protect it. I like to do this before adding the hair, so what I like to do is take some Glad wrap and cover the face, sticking it down with some masking tape. In the meantime, you also want to map out where you would like the hairline to start. To do this, go in with your pencil again and draw a line. Because Shania has a fringe, the hairline is going to start a bit further up. I'm going to show you in the next step how we prep the hair. So now we're going to make hair wefts to put on the sculpture. I absolutely love working with this hair as it styles really well and it's super affordable. It comes in an array of different colors and each packet contains a generous 3 bundles, which I find can cover up to 3 to 4 sculptures, or just depending how big your sculptures are. Alright, you're going to cut your desired length with a super sharp scissors. You're then going to use your PVA craft glue and a brush to apply the hair onto a mat. I like to use this one to create the wefts. The good thing about this mat is that you can move it around and even put it outside in the sun so that the glue dries quicker. My workspace isn't that big, so this is a good option for me. So take your glue and make a nice line on the board, and then take your hair and spread it evenly along the glue line. You don't want to make your wefts too thick, otherwise it won't look great, so try to make your rows as consistent as possible. Once they're all laid out, take some more glue and make a line on top. Take your brush and pat down the glue. Try keep the line as neat as possible, otherwise it will be a nightmare to create a clean weft. Make sure you have enough glue on there so that the hair doesn't come out when dried. You can flip the mat around and do the same on the other side. Once you're done, you can put the mat outside to dry. Alrighty, so the hair is now ready and the glue is completely dry. You're going to carefully detach the hair from the mat. Be careful not to be too rough with this, otherwise the weft will break. To neaten this up and to get rid of the scraggly bits, take your scissors and cut along the glue line, leaving at least 3 centimeters so that you have a nice clean weft ready to stick on your sculpture. Now take your weft and place it on your sculpture just to see how it will look. I'm going to check the reference just to see how thick Shania's fringe is. I completely forgot to add eyebrows, but I'll paint those in a bit later. Because Shania is going to have a hoodie, I've grabbed some foil and placed it on top just to give me an idea of how the hair will look with her hoodie. I think I'm just happy with one layer as I don't want the hair too thick. I stuck some wefts on with tape just to see how it would look. A great saying I've learnt recently is to measure twice and cut once. Always be careful when doing this. Once you're happy with your wefts, you can grab your PVA glue and start sticking the fringe down. Again, you can take your foil and place it on top just to give you an idea of how it might look. It's coming out great. A few hours have passed and the glue is dry. Get your hot iron out because it's time to get styling. I like to straighten the hair before cutting as Shania isn't going to have crimped hair, so I like to try style the hair as close as I can to the finished look as possible. Once the hair is straightened, take your sharp scissors and carefully cut the fringe. It's better to cut less than more because if you cut too much off, it's not going back. You might have to go back and cut it 3 or 4 times just to get your desired length. I've learnt the hard way by cutting off too much hair, so just be careful. I think that length looks good, so now we can curl the side bits. To be honest, I'm not that confident styling hair, like I really need to practice more. But once the sculpture is finished, I will go back over the curls and cut the side bits a bit shorter. But for now, we can start on the next phase, which includes covering the hair and face ready to create the hoodie. I have no bloody idea how and if this is gonna work, but it's the most logical move if I wanted to add the hoodie on top of the hair, okay? This is by far the most complex sculpture I've made to date. And to think it's such a simple concept adding a hoodie to a sculpture. I'm going to create the base shape out of aluminium foil and put a really thin layer of epoxy clay on both sides. Okay, yeah, no, this didn't work at all. I have to order wire mesh to help with the structure as this foil is not going to cut it. I hate when this happens, but I guess it's all part of the process. Alrighty, it's been a few days and the mesh wire has arrived. I'm praying this works. So I'm going to measure and map out exactly how this mesh is going to fit on the doll. I'm going to have to attach it first with epoxy and then wait a few days for it to dry and then later go in with the details. So far, so good. This is honestly so much better than the foil. Okay, let's wait for this to dry and we'll come back to it shortly. It's been over 24 hours and guess what? The mesh worked. I was slightly stressed for no reason because it held perfectly. So now I'm going to build up the rest of the hood, adding more clay and shaping it out properly. Once it's fully covered and completely dry, I'll sand everything back so it's nice and smooth. Then seal it with a layer of gesso to prep for paint. Now we're getting Shania into her leopard. Fun fact, leopard fur isn't just one flat color under the spots, there's actually variation and depth. So I'm mixing about 3 or 4 tones to create a subtle gradient. I'm not gonna lie, covering this whole outfit in leopard spots took me nearly 2 hours, which doesn't sound insane, but when you're hand painting every single one, it feels long. But weirdly, it was kind of therapeutic. I decided to keep the base black instead of full leopard because otherwise it's giving too much. We need drama, not chaos. Once the paint's done, it's time for the glam. Peeling off the protective plastic, I threaded a beaded necklace around her neck a few times, and then added these insane lashes. And because it's Shania, we're adding a little bit of edge, some metal spikes on the base just to toughen it up a bit. I'm honestly obsessed with how she's turning out. Oh, and I made a tiny version of her suitcase to sit beside her on the podium. It's the details for me. And after nearly a month of trial and error, a bit of frustration and a lot of excitement, and maybe questioning my life choices once or twice, she's finally finished. This Shania sculpture really pushed me, but I'm so glad I stuck with it because she deserved the patience. If you create your own dolls inspired by my videos, please tag me. I genuinely love seeing your versions and how you interpret these icons. Thank you for being part of the process and cheering me on while I bring these divas to life. If you enjoyed this one, like and subscribe for more pop culture legends in miniature form. Happy crafting!